Why do we crave the advice of people who aren't in the room listening to us, people who don't even know us? Why do we think because someone's made a lot of money, they're an expert at more aspects of life? Why does their advice all sound the same? And is the advice making us miserable, as about a dozen other videos suggest? If so, why? Self-help suffers from the same defects as everything we're offered under capitalism. They're things we can do alone to improve ourselves, while our biggest problems come from outside ourselves. The self-help industry is an excellent example of the problem of individual solutions to collective problems. In this video, I'm taking a look at some of the assumptions behind the self-help industry and considering a couple of its most popular nuggets of advice to see how well they hold up. I'm Chris, and welcome back to the channel that can and does. As we learned in my last video, if you're not motivated to work for others, you're lazy. You're lazy for not working as much as other people tell you to, and you're worthless if you're not constantly being productive. What a wonderful system we live under. What is the purpose of motivational media? Surely it can't be going to work, because the fear of poverty is most people's main reason for that. The point of getting motivation from someone else is to get us up and improving ourselves. It's great to want to be better, but surely improving is a means to some end. What's the end? You don't have to be perfect or compete to prove you're the best. In fact, even the cliche that you should be better than your former self is pressure to improve and succeed at improving, to feel bad when you're not improving, or if you stagnate and decline, because you're not living up to your potential. Well, why do you have to? There are all kinds of reasons a person might want to improve their skills and knowledge, to seek teachers and advisors. However, as I never tire of saying, beware of advice. Everyone's got advice, and they don't have to know your situation to lecture you on what you should do. Our instinct when someone asks is to throw all the relevant advice and information and inspiration that we can think of at them and hope some of it will stick, with the understanding that you can always ignore my advice. But we don't. If we don't know the difference, we get influenced by the bad advice as well as the good. Advice is often misplaced due to having no knowledge of context. If I don't know you, I don't know how you're going to take my advice. If I don't know your situation, I don't know why my advice or inspiration is misleading and worthless. The advice we receive isn't tailored, but comes out of a giant random advice generator fed on the unexamined assumptions of the culture and offcuts of Tony Robbins. Self-help as we know it is a collection of life advice accrued over thousands of years that keeps getting repackaged to sell to new people. Today's self-help advice isn't telling you how to be free, wise, and happy. It's telling you how to be more like everyone else, on the premise that's how to be happy. We're going in with the assumption there's something wrong with us, because we don't have perfect lives like people around us apparently do. If we don't have values and goals given to us by someone else, our lives will be rudderless and meaningless. At least that's the implication. Like the beauty industry, the self-help industry makes money by creating and prolonging the feeling you're inadequate. Before self-help took over the conversation, did anyone think you should be constantly trying to improve all your skills in the hope someone will give you money for it one day? It's easy to fall for the promises of the industry, like learning the secret to or science of weight loss or getting rich or achieving all your goals, because that's what we want. But what we want from self-help is what self-help has taken from us. We weren't incomplete or unattractive until we were told we were. We didn't need to constantly make progress until we were told that's the way to get what you want. But what do we want that's so complicated? If all you want is to have a simple life with a place to live, great, well, you might be able to do it. We don't need self-help for that, do we? Isn't it just a question of having enough money? I mean, not that that's easy, but it's simple. Money would probably solve all your most immediate problems. Like, I've had a budget, I've done time management, I've followed all the advice. It doesn't help you make rent in a bad month. But there's a whole industry of self-help out there to persuade you want more. You don't make money off people just by telling them they should have more money. We already know that. You need to complicate things. Nor do you want to tell them the truth about how to get rich, which is just own something people want and find people who need the money more than you do to do the work. So most financial or work-related advice we get is just a remix of the capitalist gospel we've heard most of our lives. Work hard, get good grades, get a job or start a business, avoid debt, save, and invest. Having side hustles and multiple streams of income is just getting a job in your spare time. Hustle culture is shaming people as lazy for only laboring while the sun is out. Girl bosses hustle culture in pink boots. To hear the Gary V's talk, they seem to think your days should be divided into work and a few minutes of sleep. But we might also learn about time management and work-life balance and meditation and yoga so you can still maximize how much you work, but not burn out too young. Telling people to never give up is telling them to work more, and implicitly placing the blame on them when they don't achieve something because they must not have worked hard enough to deserve it. Having a positive mindset is about telling yourself things aren't so bad, so you can go back to work. But since we never really get what we want, we have to buy more books and attend more seminars. Everyone wants freedom from capitalism. So of course there are plenty of us who are willing to pay for this advice. Self-help and all advice exist in a capitalist system. Like all media, it affects and is affected by the culture. If successful people say you gotta work hard to be just like them, then a whole industry of how to work hard is likely to sprout. Like everything else under capitalism, even our motivations, our emotions, are commodified and available for a small fee. Selling, including all con artistry, requires appealing to what your customer wants, or what you can make them want. That's why salespeople are often very friendly and give out free samples. You want to help out your friend, don't you? Or if you've seen the movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, you know Michael Caine's character pretends to be a prince in exile to con rich women who want some excitement and forbidden romance in their lives.
Monsieur Andre, would you see what you can get for this, please?
Not the royal ring, Your Highness.
Shh. Do you want the whole world to know?
Under capitalism, we want money. Especially when you're younger, money seems like the most important thing. Because not only does it bring in the food and the shelter, but also the luxuries, the romantic partners apparently, and that most valuable of all commodities, time. In theory, the more money you have, the less you have to work. Except, if you want to keep your income, you might have to work as much as your boss says. So you reason you might have to work hard now, but the more you work now, the earlier you can retire. But maybe not in this century. Or you might want to take long vacations, or maybe you just love blow. And obviously, if you have lots of money, you can pursue those desires. What we're really getting when we have money is freedom. The freedom to choose from the millions of options available to people who can afford them. It's true, under capitalism, you can do anything. If you have the money. If you don't have the money, you can do nothing. Today's self-help, motivation, financial, career, life advice sells the promise of freedom. It urges you to work through the system in order to escape from it. They can point to people who have escaped the system or who've gotten so rich they are the system without mentioning they're the exception rather than the norm. I can interview Warren Buffett and then boil his words down to 7 points of advice or however many my publisher suggests. In fact, now you could just get ChatGPT to write it. And sell it as, here's how you can be just like Warren Buffett. Without mentioning our contexts are kinda different. Have you ever heard of survivorship bias? The question isn't how many people succeeded by this formula, but how many failed despite this formula. The latter number probably exponentially higher than the former. I also think people are probably self-helping in all the wrong ways. Not just because they take advice from people who are just making it up, but also because they're still being told to prepare for the 20th century, a 20th century people wish would never end, because then they wouldn't have to face up to the hot, sweaty reality of the 21st. They're being told that they should build their careers and pick up women, and I'm here like, how are these skills going to help you when it's too hot to go outside because outside is on fire? The point is, if you want to learn useful skills, we're going to need more practical ones in this century than last. Last century, we thought money could solve all problems. In this century, nature is proving us wrong. Anything you can build, nature can knock down. Same goes for you, of course. However strong your strengths and minimal your weaknesses, you can lose it all in the blink of an eye. The life of the powerful is one of isolation. You're scared of the people under you instead of being supported by the people around you. Rather than trying to compete for jobs and influence and brownie points, we can work together to understand and deal with our common problems. I watched a bunch of other videos on this topic, and they make a lot of great points that I wanted to add, so I'll put their links in the description and splice them into this video. I was so glad to find this video because it looks at self-help advice from a scientific perspective.
Well, some of this advice may be based on sound psychological principles. Much of it is not supported by scientific evidence or is outright pseudo-scientific.
A lot of the advice we get sold is based on nothing, or an anecdote, pop psychology or pseudoscience like the power of positive thinking, which is just a secular version of the power of prayer.
And yes, people do have the right to spend or waste their money on whatever they want. It could be considered like a form of entertainment, but perhaps that money could be better spent on time with a therapist or a treatment that has a strong scientific basis instead.
This one is about why self-help feels good, because you get the feeling you're doing something when you're just reading a book or listening to a video, and how you become addicted to the rush because learning about self-improvement feels like self-improvement. Alex here underlines the point in her video and asks,
if the self-help industry is really as helpful as they make it out to be, why is it growing and we are not? Looking back, if I was really progressing, then why did I keep coming back?
Reading can just be a way to avoid acting. Talking about our goals feels like achieving our goals. Talking about changing the world feels like changing the world. And that's the danger of my videos, of course, which is why I always urge people to get involved. Don't let my videos stop you from acting, but encourage you to act. We should be angry, not helpless. Joelle here has great points on the industry.
It's literally in their purpose to satisfy your hunger for purpose and affirmation just enough so that you believe them, but not enough so that it actually changes anything. And the key thing is that they keep telling you to invest in yourself, which means money.
What's more, self-help causes the very problems it seeks to heal by encouraging a toxic individualism that gets us to focus entirely on ourselves and ignore the world around us, as if the rest of the world didn't have to affect our lives. So what's the cure for individualist self-help?
Why not community help or community growth? Why does it have to be self-help? Because at the end of the day, when you lift up everyone, you're lifting up yourself as well, right?
Likewise, why do we only work on skills related to money? Why do we spend so much time trying to learn sales techniques and time management and no time learning kindness, compassion, cooperation, building community, organizing decentralized insurrections, that kind of thing? Finally, this documentary makes an excellent point.
Self-improvement is masturbation.
So that's some of what's wrong with the self-help industry. It's narrowly focused on the individual in a way that leads us to ignore the effects of systems and ideologies, the barriers they present, the pain and suffering they cause, and just get back to work. And yet, its assumptions are now embedded in our culture. When everyone seems to be saying the same thing, we get common sense or conventional wisdom, which implies we don't question it. Some made-up self-help advice that gets thrown at you whenever you want a sympathetic ear has become common sense. I think we should talk about it. Everyone used to tell me hard work was important, and I found it depends on the job. The way I heard people talk, I thought any job would give you a raise or a promotion if you just showed up on time, worked hard, and impressed the boss now and again. But companies expect you to do that. At most jobs I know of, promotions are like once every 10 years when someone retires. And a raise? At a non-union job? You watch too many movies. The value of hard work and or improving your skills is your company will put off firing you for now. The motivation industry I talked about in my last video is based on one idea: never give up. Never give up means work harder and longer. This slogan gets repeated and reiterated so often it feels self-evident that if you want something, you should pursue it relentlessly until you get it. But it carries certain flaws its exponents never mention. First, we can want anything, but it all costs money. When I set goals, they'll have to be within the limits of the world that I know, which means I can only do things I can afford to do. So the only goal that really matters is getting enough money to do what I want. Sure, I can set goals for how many baskets I can shoot or how fast I can speedrun a game, but if I care about money or career, those goals will have to be my priority. Because I don't really like working on them, but I force myself to, so they take more of my time and effort. And should you really never give up, regardless of the barriers in your way? I mean, you say never give up, but no, really, when should you give up? Some things just aren't worth it. Why never give up when you could just go for something else? Most of our goals are arbitrary anyway. Make a certain amount of money, reach a certain waist or bicep size. What if you gave up before you hit that number? Are you going to feel bad about yourself for not reaching the number? Giving up is just moving on to other things, changing your priorities. And I wonder how many guys think never give up applies to romance and relationships and what disastrous effects that might have had. I can see them pursuing women who've said no because they've learned to think no means try harder.
Dennis always tells me, never let someone's resistance stop you from getting what you want.
When I was at university, we got a lot of advice about how you shouldn't try to change the world. Change yourself, and the world will learn from your example. Work on yourself first, then when your house is in order, go out and change the world. I still hear it going around. It seems like well-meant advice, but I don't agree with it. It's an old argument, but it's been given new life under Jordan Peterson. Peterson's insistence on getting your house in perfect order exemplifies the problem psychologist Sven Brinkman has, the implication that self-improvement is a process without end. You can never say, now I've reached my full potential, now I'm actually the best version of myself. I thought that was when your room was clean, but turns out it's never. Of course, it's part of the human condition that we strive for things. But if we're only okay as long as we're striving, moving, developing, then we're never okay. then we can never really say to ourselves, well, I do something valuable, I lead a meaningful life, I don't have to strive to become someone else over time. I think that's quite dangerous. The main thought of a depressed person is, I'm not good enough. I can never be good enough. It's my own fault why I'm not good enough. The frightening fact is that the depressed person is actually right. He or she is actually interpreting society's message to the individual correctly. We're never allowed to be happy and satisfied, both what we are and what we do. What does it mean to set your house in order? How do you know when you're done? What does JP say?
People can do a tremendous amount of good for themselves and for the people who are immediately around them by looking to their own inadequacies and their own flaws and the things that they're not doing in their lives and starting to build themselves up as more powerful individuals. And if they're capable of doing that, and then they're capable of expanding their career. And if they're capable of expanding their career and their competence, then they're capable of taking their place in the community as effective leaders. And then they're capable of making wise decisions instead of unwise decisions when it comes to making collective political decisions.
So people have to prove themselves to themselves, I guess, by working hard, improving themselves, getting a good career, and otherwise following an average self-help program. And at some point they'll just know. They know enough to look outwards. Why any of that, though? Why is it someone who's unemployed, has mental health issues, hasn't worked on their strengths and weaknesses, why can't they do the things the other folks can do? What if leadership is one of their strengths? Somehow I feel like this is Peterson selling a license to decide who does and who doesn't have their house in order. Who's just a pseudo-moralist.
Generally, the way they avoid them is by adopting pseudo-moralistic stances on large-scale social issues so that they look good to their friends and their neighbors.
And therefore should have no say in social change. I also want to know what's so special about people who do have their house in order. They can rise in the hierarchy to be leaders and decision makers whose decisions the rest of us just have to accept. This is a license to retroactively justify those leaders and rulers you like, they had their houses in order, and lump the bad ones all together as having personal failings that caused their downfall. Now, I'll grant that if you change, you can create a knock-on effect and make the world a little better in the pay-it-forward sense of touching people's lives. If I'm kind, I might inspire kindness in those around me. If I'm an asshole all the time, I can't expect other people to be kind. So I'll be kind. So what? So my kindness inspires millions of people, so what? Who am I helping? What am I solving? Because kindness or motivation or skills or whatever else people gain from self-help, without a keen analysis of your situation, will only make you better at doing what you're already doing. The people making money off self-help tell you to look inward for all the answers, but without looking outward too, the answers will be incomplete. If your question is, why am I unhappy? And the only options you consider are A, you need more money, and B, you want a girlfriend, then you're missing something. Have you considered C, your job sucks because no matter what you do for money, you have to accept low pay and long hours and dick bosses? A lot of what we learn from these books and speakers is just more skills to make employers employ you. But if we do nothing to change the nature of work, it's still gonna suck. How about D? You see authoritarians taking over everywhere and it feels like just breathing is becoming illegal. That's not a you problem. What about E? The future is so bleak you can't imagine living past 50. I'm sure you could add in some F's of your own. Have you ever noticed it's the more conservative people who tell you to work on yourself first? It's because they don't want social change. They want you tangled up in self-improvement forever, so you can ignore the enormous effects of the capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy you live under. There are ways to address and prevent the harm done by the institutions we're ruled by, but self-help is not one of them. It's ironic also that these rich guys tell you success means working on yourself all the time, because in business, the most important things get done in groups. Groups share thoughts and give feedback, plan and consider contingencies, make decisions, hold each other accountable, and yet we're expected not only to take a completely different approach to ourselves, but to think you can only improve yourself, not the conditions around you. All the sensitive, intelligent, resourceful people that should be out changing the world, they're actually just sitting in the therapy room trying to realize themselves. We need less Jordan Peterson, less working on yourself forever and doing nothing as your world collapses, and more Paulo Freire. Learning by analyzing and organizing in groups in order to change your situation as well as yourself. Less motivation and personal goals, and more anger and direct action. As a corollary of working on yourself first and never giving up on any of your goals, we're not allowed to complain. The idea is, if you complain, you're putting the blame on the external, rather than looking at yourself first. I had a few questions about this. Where's the line between complaining and legitimate criticism based on analysis? Or is even criticism against the rules? What about thoughtful critique? Satire? Jokes? Or do all these things bring us down and distract from our goals? Is there something inherent to complaining that stops us from acting? Like, can't I complain and then get back to work? What if I complain about the systems that are making it unnecessarily difficult for me to reach my goals? Isn't complaining just self-expression? Can't complaining feel cathartic? Can't it help us find others with the same problem? Can't it help clarify and locate the source of the problem? What if collective institutions like an empire are what stands in our way? Work on ourselves until they collapse? This article looks at the terrible logic behind not allowing yourself to complain. The very idea of self-help implies that the self can be helped and that it's in all our powers to do so. Many self-help regimes assume that we have infinite agency to shape our own fate, and that we must be lacking in willpower if we don't succeed in doing so. The perhaps most extreme form of that kind of thinking is at work in texts like The Secret, which suggests that everything that happens to us is our own doing, because our thoughts are magnetic and attract matching psychospiritual energies to us. If we fail to think happy thoughts, the law of attraction ensures that bad stuff will happen to us. According to that logic, assaults, illnesses, accidents, and even genocide are ultimately all the victim's fault. The reason the gurus tell you not to complain is the cure they sell you is purely individual. And I agree, if you want to and can change something about yourself, don't complain, just do it. But when you have the same problems as billions of other people on the planet, they're not individual problems. They're collective problems that will never change without collective action. You can self-help yourself all day long. We'll still have to use money, so we'll still have all the stresses, scams, and power balances associated with money. We'll still have the threat of laws and police and prisons, especially the most marginalized people, because we'll still have bigotry, so we can still have our freedom taken away at any time. The electoral system reinforces this ideology of focusing on the individual and ignoring collective problems. We vote for individuals, not policies, so the only ideas we have are to change the individuals in power. What if the problem is the institution exists? What if instead of reforming and restaffing the puppy-crushing machine, we just got rid of it? Without challenging, changing, and even eliminating hierarchical social institutions, we're a bunch of individuals pointlessly improving ourselves indoors while the unhoused people and the kids in cages look in from the unbearable heat outside. And by the way, if you've internalized ideas like ignore the naysayers and nothing is impossible if you really want it, you of course would never contradict yourself by objecting with things like the world has always been like this and changing things is impossible and pointless. But if you think we can change something other than our net worth, we're ready to escape the self-help mindset and lift each other up. You might have problems only you can solve, but usually other people can help. If you have specific personal problems you want to resolve, you might do well to talk to someone who will listen without answering straight away. Do you know what I mean? When people come to me for advice, I usually just listen, maybe ask the occasional question, and usually the answer to the person's problem presents itself as they're talking. Because the solution flows logically from the problem, if you lay out the problem clearly enough, you might understand it and therefore what to do about it. I don't have all the answers. In fact, you probably have the answers inside you. You just need to know the question. But if you really want to improve your life, stop managing your time and identifying your strengths and weaknesses. We have bigger problems. Your world is getting more restrictive, violent, and impoverished. We can't do much on our own, however strong our strengths. Together, we can do anything. But I've never read much about working together in the self-help stuff. Why is it all never give up when it's a personal goal like making money or winning a race, but never for anything that takes more people to accomplish, like finding homes for people and toppling a dictatorship? Where's that book in the self-help section? It's not. It's free. But on top of the fact that it's effective, one of the main reasons I suggest getting involved in some form of mutual aid or resistance on practically all my videos is it means devoting one's time and effort to a cause, finding other people, working together as equals. In that kind of work, we find meaning. We find community. These things help us find happiness. They don't guarantee it. Nothing does. They could be the cause of suffering, too. But that's life. Life is ups and downs. If you have a community behind you, they can cushion the downs so they don't hurt so much. See, we're encouraged to search for purpose and meaning, but only within socially accepted norms. Whenever I searched for my purpose, all I could find was work hard, make money, save, and invest. What changed in me was I learned more about the world, about history and philosophy, and about people who challenged norms and injustice. I began to realize things can and should be different. I hadn't been looking for purpose exactly. What I found was a world of oppression and war that didn't have to be that way. What's to search for? The need for change is right in front of our eyes. Working with the people around us to learn about and change things is likely to be far more rewarding than competing against them to have the biggest house and the greenest grass. There are other kinds of achievement besides money, career, and hobbies. Other goals you could set yourself. If I give money to friends or homeless people, I'm losing ground on my money goals. That's okay. You could also set no goals for yourself, and that's fine too. You can just do stuff without feeling it has to contribute to making you better. But if you want to be better, don't just lift up yourself to win a pointless game while others fall behind. You'll find meaning as you build community and achieve things together. Lift everyone up, and they'll lift you up. Thanks.